right, so today we're going to be converting decimals to percents. And if you notice here, we have D and then P, because you're always going to start with your decimal to the left and then your percent to the right. So the way I remember which order it goes in is D, then P. So decimal, then percent, or you can remember Dr. Pepper, or some people even like to say Dr. Phil. Okay, so just remember Dr. Pepper, Dr. Phil. Okay, that's the order it goes in. D first and then P. And whenever we're changing a decimal to a percent, we're going to be moving our decimal to the right because we're really going to be multiplying by 100. Okay, so I'm going to practice here. I'm going to start with my decimal and I'm going to change it to a percent. So I'm going to multiply by 10, multiply by 100. My decimal is now at the very end, so I don't need to keep it on there. I can take it off, and I now have 44%. All right, now let's do that again. We're going to multiply by 100, which means we're going to move that decimal twice to the right. And remember, Dr. Phil or Dr. Pepper tells us how to move it. So I'm going to multiply by 10, multiply by 100. The new home for my decimal is now between the 5 and the 3. So my percentage would be 15.3%, or 15 3/10%. All right, let's do this again. I'm going to start. All right, so we're going to move the decimal, multiply by 10, multiply by 100. Remember, when the decimal's on the very end, though, you can take it off. So this would just be 173%. Okay? Again, we're starting with decimal. We're going to percent. So we're going to multiply by 10, multiply by 100. If the decimal's in the back, take it off, and we have 14%. Okay? Same thing here. Okay? I see 1 and 63 hundredths, so we're going to multiply that by 100. So we're going to multiply by 10, multiply by 100. Again, remember, if your decimal is at the end, go ahead and take it off. And 1.63 now becomes 163%. All right, now let's look at this one. The 0 and 8/10. We're still going to multiply by 100. So that means we're going to move our decimal twice to the right. So we're going to go 1, multiply by 10. 2, we just multiplied by 100. When there's nothing there, remember, we're going to fill it in with 0. And 0.8 now becomes 80%. Okay? Same thing here. We have 0.997. To change our decimal to a percent, we're going to move our decimal twice to the right, which means we are multiplying by 100. So we multiply by 10, we multiply by 100. Now my percentage would be 99.7%. Okay, and last decimal percent we're going to do now. We have 0 and 2/10. So remember, we're going to move our decimal twice to the right. So we're going to go 1, multiplied by 10. 2, we just multiplied by 100. We put in a 0 behind it. And 0.2 is now 20%. So that is how we convert a decimal to a percent. Now we're going to look at it going the other way. We're now going to look at going from a percent to a decimal. So here we're going to still remember our Dr. Pepper or our Dr. Phil, okay? But this time we are going to be dividing. So we're going to be moving twice to the left, which means we're going to be dividing by 100 to start with a percent and go to a decimal. So see now here how the percent is to the right and decimals to the left, so we're going to be moving left. All right, so let's go ahead and let's do these examples. I'm going to take off my percent sign. And I'm going to divide by 10, divide by 100. Notice I'm just moving in the opposite direction now. So our answer would be 0.877. okay? Or really 0 and 877 thousandths is the way you read that. Okay, I'm going to do that again. We're going to take off the percent sign, and we're going to divide by 10, divide by 100. So our answer would be 0.454, or 454 thousandths. Okay, next one. We're going to take off that percent sign. If there is no decimal, we're always going to assume it's at the end, or know it's at the end. So our decimal I'm going to put behind the 3, and we're going to divide by 10, divide by 100. So our answer is going to be 0.43, or 43 hundredths. Okay, same thing with this 7 here. We're going to take off the percent sign. We're going to put the decimal at the very end, and we're going to divide by 10, divide by 100. In this case, because we filled in another loop, you have to put a 0 in its spot. So here we would have 0.07, or 7 hundredths would be our decimal now. All right, let's take a look at the next one. Remember, when going from a percent to a decimal, we need to take off that percent sign. Put the decimal at the very end. We're going to divide by 10, divide by 100. My decimal is now 1 and 72 hundredths. All right, again, let's do 29%. We're going to take off that percent sign. And we're going to go 1, 2. So our answer is going to be 29 hundredths. All right, last part we're going to talk in the video today is about special percents. Okay, here our special percent 33 1/3. We already know that this is, as a decimal, 1/3 is 0.3 repeating, right? So here, if we're starting with a decimal and going to a percent, we need to move twice to the left. So we're going to go 1, 2. Okay, so we're still going to go 1, 2, put our decimal on the front. Now there's no need to put 0.333. Remember, this would just be 0.3 repeating. Okay, same thing with the 66 2/3. Our 66 2/3 as a decimal, this would be 66.6 repeating. Okay, so when we change our percent to a decimal, we would just go 1, 2, and instead of having all 3 sixes, we would have 0.6 repeating with a line above it. Okay, and those are the special types.